All right, yes, and we're live. Hi there. How's it going? I'm Uncle Game Boy, and, well, what am I doing right now? Let me tell you. I make a little show on Twitch where I try to come up with funny little things to do, and one of those funny things that I came up to do today, it's already going great, it's already going really great, I started this feeling weird, and I was like, do I feel too weird to do this? I don't know. No, I can do this. I can just get into that right space. And no, I'm not so sure. But anyway, enough about me. What I'm doing right now is going to read the novelization of a movie called Foodfight. It might be a movie you've heard of. It's a really popular object of derision on the internet, I'll have you know. John Tron made a YouTube video about it, got 20 million views or something like that. I don't feel like I need to belabor the point. You probably are familiar with it, but you might not know that they made a book about it also. And I just thought it'd be a lark to read it. Why not? We paused last time on chapter 8, where we left Dex Dog Detective, the heroic super sleuth, and his plucky partner, Dan the squirrel, the chocolate squirrel, were unfortunately experiencing a schism where the alluring but unfortunately nefarious as well Lady X from the competing brand X that has woven its evil ways into the Marketopolis supermarket world. And Sunshine Goodness has been taken, and everything's going bad. We left them in a pretty rough spot. So I think I have just the music for that occasion to mark such a somber event. And we're gonna continue the book, and I'm gonna do my best to finish it. Even though I'm only like a third of the way through it, I'm not sure how far I can get into it, but I'll do my best. And speaking of doing my best, I'm also going to do my best to do the best celebrity impressions I can, because as I'm sure you know, Foodfight is a stacked celebrity cast with all of the most famous stars of skate and screen, like Charlie Sheen, Ava Longoria, Christopher Lloyd Wayne Brady, etc. You'll be hearing them and many more celebrities join us as we read the Foodfight novelization, hopefully to its completion. So let's put on the flavor, pause this music, and put on the flavor of Foodfight, and also the string quartet, very appropriate string quartet. Not that one. That's not the one I wanted. This one. There we go. All right. Here we go. Continuing from chapter 8, the Foodfight novelization, the junior novelization. Chapter 8 of the Foodfight novelization. Here we go. Play the Foodfight movie, please. Thank you. All right. Later that night, Dex made his way back to his apartment in the cereal section of town. As he opened the door, the first things he saw were the yellowed newspaper clippings about Sunshine on his bulletin board. Dex sat on his sofa and held his head in his hands. "Some dog detective you turned out to be," he said to himself. Suddenly, Lady X was standing in Dex's open doorway. "Crying over spilt milk?" she asked him. "What are you doing here?" Dex snapped. She stepped in and closed the door. "I've got a hot case for you," she said, taking off her coat. "I'm looking for a guy about your height. Same great build, same strong jaw. Only difference is the guy isn't living in the past." She moved closer, and Dex got another whiff of her perfume. I can't help you," Dex told her. "Maybe I can help you get a clean start on a new relationship," Lady X offered. Dex moved across the room, trying to shake off the scent of her perfume. "So what happened to Dan?" he asked. "You already ate through to his hollow center?" "He said the sugars and salts were going to finish what they started. The aisles aren't safe tonight for a helpless lady like me," Lady X replied. "Sorry," Dex said. "I'm not buying this damsel in distress routine. You've been through the wash plenty. I can see it in your eyes." Lady X looked away. "You're right, Dex. I'm not new. Last year I was recalled." There's a typo here. Was recalled is one word in here, like was recalled. Oh man. As I've said before on this stream, okay, if you guys need a freaking copy editor, and I know this was made in 2012, so the time to offer my services are too late. But like, I'm demonstrating my fucking capability here and now. Obviously more than whatever Jokomo you had doing this that you hired. If you hired anyone at all, I can't be sure based on the slapdash work that was done on this junior novelization of Foodfight. Lady X looked away. You're right, Dex, I'm not new. Last year I was recalled, but I'm changed now. New ingredients, repackaged with a fresh scent. I want to forget my past just like you do. Dex looked at the pictures of sunshine. You turn the music's a little loud. Music's a little loud. It's appropriately somber, but it's a little too loud. Oh, man. Here we go. Dex looked at the pictures of sunshine. I can't forget, he said. Oh, but you're wrong, Dex, Lady X said, dabbing more perfume behind her ears. I can wash away your memories. Dex felt himself weakening as the scent filled the room. Lady X wafted toward him, about to plant a big kiss on the dog detective, but a blood-curdling scream from the aisles broke the spell. Dex dashed to the door and headed for the streets. Wait, Lady X called out, I haven't shown you my secret ingredient. The crime scene had been cordoned off with yellow price tags by the time Dex arrived. There they were, expired Ikes lying all over the sidewalk. Harry Holt is British, right? I think. Dex, thank goodness you're here, Harry Holt cried as he saw the dog detective make his way through the crowd. Get out of here, Fly. The salts and sugars, Harry said with a shiver. It must have been an all-out war. Get out of here. Maximilian Moose soon joined Dex at the scene. How many Ikes went down? Dex asked. Maybe 30, boss, the Moose answered. Everyone we tossed out of the banana. Dan and Lady X and the only one is the only ones missing. And the lady's got an alibi, Lady X said as she sauntered up. Sorry, there's like 6 people here. I'm having a hard time figuring who's talking. And the lady's got an alibi, Lady X said as she sauntered up to the crime scene. Dex and I were just talking. I warned him there might be trouble. As investigators dusted for prints with baby powder, Harry Holt suddenly gasped, "Oh dear," Harry said as they began to remove the bodies. "They're bringing the body bags." It was a terrible night in Marketropolis. All right, Jesus Christ, there's like dead people. The Moose shook his head as he spoke to Dex. "Boss, all them Ikes," he said sadly. "We all knows when a product loses its icon, it spoils, goes bad. So what can we do?" "Nothing," Dex replied grimly. "We're the soul of our products. Without us, they're gone." Maximilius understood. Without its brand icon, a product just couldn't survive in this world. What are they talking about? As they took the expired Roma extra salty pepperoni pizza sauce icon away, the sauce was already oozing from the Roma pepperoni building. My, how grim. "I've never seen anything like this," Lady X said. "Oh, we have," Harry told her. "When Sunshine Goodness disappeared, her box has faded, raisin soured. The only difference was her body was never..." Harry suddenly saw the look in Dex's face. Found anything interesting, Dex?" The dog detective was happy to change the subject. "These Ikes didn't expire in a rubble," Dex said. Somebody just wants it to look that way." Dex leaned over and scraped a thin coating of ice from the Viking ice cream sandwich icon laying at his feet. "Freezer burn," Dex declared, knowing that these deaths had been planned. He was spoiled before his time. Looks like all these poor Ikes were rubbed out. Harry Holt was stunned. "But why?" he asked nervously. "How? Who?" Lady X suddenly said. "Dan, he said he was going to get back at the salts. His plan must have backfired." The crowd of Ikes outside the crime scene tape shouted, "Daredevil Dan, let's get him. String him up by the tail." "Hold it," Dex said, but to the angry mob, "Dan would never do anything like this." Harry Holt knew he had trouble on his hands. "We have to find him before the rest of the salts do." "Then you better start styling, Harry," Dex said flatly. "Me?" Harry said, but he hated being in charge. "I can't. You have to help us, Dex, before I go bald." Harry saw a bald, cleaning Ike frown. "Not that bald isn't beautiful," he added with an apologetic smile. Don't tell me the great dog detective's running away with his tail between his legs," Lady X said with a swish of her hips. But Dex didn't hesitate. "I don't get involved anymore," he told her and turned to walk away. As Maximilius, Moose, and Dex left the scene, Maximilius said, "After losing Sunshine, boss, I thought she'd never smiles again, but Dan was there for you." Dex clenched his jaw. Deep down, he knew that the moose was right. You can't change his song. I couldn't. I have to find fucking this like copyright-free music, and it's not long. This should be. I think this is acceptable. Chapter 9. The next morning, the doors of the market burst open. A stampede of frantic customers rushed toward the Brandex washing machine display. From the top of the machine, colored puffs of the detergent's fresh new scent wafted into the air. The shoppers' eyes took a strange sparkle as they breathed it in. Suddenly, they tore the boxes from each other's hands, trying to get as much Brandex detergent into their carts as they could. That's some elixir, Dex said as he watched the action from inside his Cinnamon Sleuth cereal box. On another aisle, Mr. Leonard was cleaning up the oozing pizza sauce from the night before. Nothing harder than seeing good food go bad, he said to himself sadly. A cold hand clasped. A cold hand clasped Mr. Leonard's shoulder. It was the tall, thin Brandex executive. Looks like we arrived just in time, the thin man said with a twisted smile. He made a few marks on his clipboard as loads of Brandex pizza sauce were wheeled in. Dex used his telescope to get a better view. Brandex replacements for every Ike rubbed out last night, Dex said to himself. Now, how did Mr. Clipboard over there know about that? He watched Mr. Leonard solemnly push a cart heaped with all the damaged products. Poor Ike's, Dex thought grimly. Then he began to wonder, turning to look at the Daredevil Dan's pure milk chocolate display. If the Ikes were all wiped out, then how did Dan survive and not wind up in the expiration station? Dex whipped his telescope around to see Mr. Leonard pushing the cart of damaged goods through the steel doors from which no Ike ever returned. Dex rubbed his chin, and his eyebrows drew together as the facts whirled around in his head. Something was definitely going bad, and it wasn't in the dairy aisle. That was a short chapter. Chapter 10. The lights of Markotropolis shined more dimly now. Oh god, they did this thing where they fucking scanned it and they like folded it. Fucked up. I'll do my best. I'll do my fucking best here. The lights of Markotropolis shined more dimly now that 30 new colorless Brandex products filled the shelves. Inside his apartment, Dex paced, feeling in his gut that it was all tied together, but he just didn't know how. Something's wrong, Dex said as he paced. Dan's in trouble, I just know it. He looked at Sunshine's pictures. I let you down, Sunshine, he said. I just can't throw in the paper towel on Dan. He was your best friend, too. Dex armed himself with every dog detective gadget he owned. I just hope I don't fail you both, he said, as he left his apartment and headed to the streets. At the same time, inside the deli case, Harry Holt was having a meeting of all the major Ikes in Markotropolis. Harry banged a gavel and shouted, I call this session of the United Supermarket Defense Association to order. But no one heard him over the chaos. Order, Harry yelled. The USDA must come to order. Why is everyone screaming? Harry demanded. This only concerns sugars and salts. Not anymore, Lady X announced as she walked in with General X on one side and Lieutenant X on the other. Oh my. The crowd watched in silence. Okay, who's General X? Who's General X? He hasn't come up yet. Jerry Stiller. Okay. Who's You're telling me there's nothing left in Del Boca Vista? Okay, it's pretty similar to Ed Asner and whoever the moose was. I forget. Sugars and salts is just the tip of the iceberg, lettuce. She said, General X, our steamed potato chip icon is just divorced. A diabolical plot against cleaning product Ikes. General X stepped forward and grunted. Oh, she said, fuck, that was Lady X. Okay. Sugar versus salt is just the tip of the iceberg, lettuce, she said. General X, our steamed potato chip icon, has just discovered a diabolical plot against cleaning product Ikes. General X stepped forward and grunted. Security around here is down the drain, he said to the he told the crowd. The worried cleaning products suddenly couldn't agree more. They began pumping their fists in the air as the mob of Ikes cheered them on. And who was behind this vicious plan? Lady X asked, whipping the eager mob into a froth. She pointed at an Ike from the Asian food section. A specialty Ike. I don't know why I did have time for that. A specialty Ike, Kung Tofu. Oh, geez. We're into some iffy territory here. The crowd gasped as they looked at the small man. Oh, God. Who does his voice? What's his name? Tofu? Kung Fu or some shit? What? Kung Tofu? That was pretty close. Who's Kung Tofu? It's probably Jimmy Hong or something like that. Okay, it's a guy named N. Rytel. He does not look... Is he Asian? I think he is. Yeah, I think he is. I can't see. His picture is very, very small. But I'm not familiar with him. Okay, but I'm not gonna... I don't think he's gonna talk very much, so I think it's fine. Harry pointed to... Wait, hold on. But I am innocent, the Asian Ike told him. Harry pounded his gavel. Everything's out of control, he shouted as the crowd began to turn angry. What can we do? Perhaps it's time to institute a curfew, Lady X said calmly, so everyone can feel safe. The crowd hung on her every fresh-scented word. Yes, a curfew, Harry said enthusiastically. Splendid idea. But that takes organization. How? Who would run it? Well, Lady X said, Brand X is 30 strong now. This is our home now, too. We want to help. Why not let my Ikes maintain order in the aisles? Maximilius Moose stood up. Why you? He asked. He asked. Why you? He asked. He's like, why you? When he's saying, why you? He asked. Dex Detective has a solid history of cleaning up our spills. Let's convince him to come back. The crowd began cheering wildly. Lady X grabbed at Harry's gavel and pounded it so hard she broke the podium. The crowd went silent. How can we pin our hopes on a dog detective who couldn't even find his own girlfriend? Lady X asked, raising a questioning eyebrow. Hold it, Maximilius Moose shouted. Dex tore the city apart searching for sunshine. He didn't leave a box top unopened. Dex is the best cinnamon sleuth ever. Was the best, Lady X said, correcting Maximilius. He quit. But I will never give up because I care what happens to each and every one of you. But it's so dangerous, a worried polar penguin called to her. Don't cry for me, Polar Penguin, Lady X said bravely. Trust me, Brand X will make everything better. You have my promise. The Ikes went wild for a sales pitch. We will take care of you, Lady X said as she smiled coolly at the grateful cheering crowd. What about Dex? Polar Penguin shouted. Oh, we'll take care of him too, Lady X promised as a smile passed between her and Brand X henchmen. Oh no. Oh man. That doesn't sound good. Chapter 11. Dex Detective knew that something was rotten, and whether he liked it or not, he was on the case. The first place he checked was for clue. The first place. Fuck. The first place he checked for clues was the Daredevil Dan's pure milk chocolate display. He found Dan's gent. It was covered in party streamers and parked with one wheel up on a cookie package. Looks like my furry friend had himself a pretty wild night, Dex thought. Meanwhile, behind the dimly lit canals of the Italian food aisle, Lieutenant X was peeling off coupons from a large roll and putting them into Cheezel the Weasel's hand. Who's Lieutenant X? Jeff Bennett? Okay. The lady wants the dog detective, Lieutenant X said. Who's Cheezel Weasel? Who Cheezel Weasel? Lawrence Casanova. Oh right, he was like one of the weasels from fucking Roger Rabbit or something. No problem, the anxious weasel replied. He twitched as he watched Lieutenant X slowly count out the coupons. If it weren't so desperately deficient the full. If you weren't so oh my god. If you weren't so desperately deficient with your coupon dispersal, the greedy weasel added. Lieutenant X stopped counting. I don't forgot what his voice is. I don't care. Or I wouldn't have. Oh damn it. Or I could just crush you, he said, staring cruelly into the weasel's eyes. The weasel took a step backward. Cheezel the weasel sighed. The dog detective will be dropped off at the cleaners, he assured. The dog detective. Oh Jesus God, why am I having such a hard time with this now? I was managing this pretty well earlier. The dog detective will be dropped off at the cleaners, he assured Lieutenant X then quickly opened his coat. Speaking of clean, might I interest you in a toothbrush? Lieutenant X placed his... I don't think I'm doing that one very good. Lieutenant X placed his hands... Unlike all the other voices, which I'm doing very well, I think I'm not doing that one as good. Lieutenant X placed his hands on Cheezel's shoulders and pushed him ever so slightly. The weasel took another step back and fell into the canal below. I fear this will not end happily for me, Cheezel said, splashing on the water's surface. Wet to the bone, Cheezel the Weasel made his way to a part of town he was more familiar with, the discount aisle district. He spotted Dex searching a construction site, still on the hunt for Dan. Everybody seems to be searching for this squirrel, the Weasel said, siding up to Dex. Mayhaps a reward for the reckless rodent would be in the offering? If you got something up that slimy sleeve, spill the beans, Dex told him and kept walking. The Weasel caught up. Perhaps I do, perhaps I don't. He smiled. I seem to be suffering from a touch of train-induced amnesia. Dex suddenly grabbed the Weasel by the neck. Tricks of her kids, Cheezel, he said, squeezing until the Weasel's eyes bulged. Last night, the Weasel choked, I saw the chocolate furball heading towards the detergent aisle. You know, home of the lovely Lady X. When? Dex growled, squeezing more tightly. Right after the screaming started, the Weasel said, trying to breathe. Lex loosened his grip. Most suspicious, eh? The Weasel asked, catching his breath. No way, Dex said. I know Dan. He'd never leave the scene of a crime, not even for a hot dish like Lady X. But this dish is extra spicy, Cheezel the Weasel said, rubbing his neck with one hand while extending the other, one palm up to Dex. Might I remind you, my services are not voluntary. Dex pulled out a wad of coupons. It just doesn't add up, he said. Always ready to make a sale, Cheezel quickly opened his coat. Sorry. May I suggest a calculator? He asked as his arms accidentally hit a construction lever. Lucky for you, I just happened to have, but the Weasel caught Dex's glance as the detective looked up. Cheezel looked up to see a large wrecking ball high above his head. The pain, she is like an old friend, the Weasel said wearily, looking at Dex as the wrecking ball fell. Note to self, the flattened Weasel groaned as Dex walked away. Need new friends. That's one of those classic things in this novelization. It's like this if anything works in Food Fight, you know, this gag works at all. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work in text. 1 second. Okay. Chapter 12 of Food Fight, the novelization, the junior novelization. It looks like about halfway through, I think. Yeah, it looks that way. Excellent. Dex knew that Cheezel the Weasel's tip might have been a lie, but his dog detective instincts had told him the hunt was going to end up at Lady X's door. Her penthouse apartment was on top of the huge Brand X detergent washing machine display. Dex threw his grappling hook onto the balcony of the penthouse and climbed to the top. I've still got it, he said to himself as he stood on the balcony overlooking all of Marketropolis. He confidently yanked on the grappling hook, which sailed toward him faster than he had expected. As it smacked him on the head, Dex cringed. And I thought the raisins were humiliating, he sighed, rubbing his forehead. Dex shook off the setback and quietly opened the door to Lady X's luxury digs. Her apartment was decorated in a bold red and black. The lady's got style, Lex thought as he looked around. He picked up a fancy perfume bottle marked Elixir, opened it and sniffed. His eyes sparkled as he was suddenly overcome by the perfume. Dex, Lady X said as she walked through the double ooh, wow. That was bad. The French doors. The French doors. My God. Dex, Lady X said as she walked through the double French doors. I wasn't expecting company. Dex flipped the perfume bottle into his pocket. I'd say things are going exactly how you expected. Lady X clapped and the lights of the penthouse dimmed to a romantic glow. She turned on some tango music and walked toward Dex. How about joining me in a warm rinse? She asked as she pulled him into a tango. I'm not that dirty, Dex said. They both turned to the music and she kicked over a huge vase without missing a beat. But being filthy can be loads of fun, don't you think so, Dex? The two danced a tango across the room. I want to know how you rubbed all those Ikes out last night. Rubbed out all those Ikes last night, Dex said, leading Lady X into a dip. Me, Lady X said, looking up at him innocently, but I was with you, remember? Yeah, Dex said, pulling her up, trying to get me on the case before there even was one. Lady X elegantly kicked, knocking over a lamp with the tip of her foot. Naughty dog, she said. I really have been on your mind, haven't I? You've orchestrated this dance from the start, Dex said. I think you hijacked Dan and you've gotten him squirreled away somewhere. My friend better be alive or you're going to check out this store the hard way. With the strength that surprised Dex, Lady X suddenly pushed him into a dip. Your crash dummy's fine, for now, but you won't be unless you back Brand X. Dex nodded. So that's your game. They danced across the floor. We could run this store, Dex, Lady X said, and I'll all to ourselves, packed tight, no markdowns for us. I could be your sunshine. The mention of Sunshine's name was like a slap in the face for Dex. He grabbed Lady X and spun her hard. There'll never be another Sunshine, he said. Now, I'm taking you in. Oh, shit. Hold on. There we go. Okay. What's going on? Okay, there we go. Lady X broke free and spun across the room, crashing into a tray of glasses. Not before I solve your case for you, she said angrily. She hit a red button behind a painting of a laundromat. A secret door opened, revealing large mosquito-like creatures. Meet my secret weapon, the exobites. Exobites? It's exobite. B-Y-T-E-S. Exobites. I'm saying exobites. Meet my secret weapon, the exobites, Lady X said proudly, pointing to the mechanical creatures, which had large stingers. They took out your precious Ikes for me. She gave the exobites a commanding wave, and they swarmed Dex. And now it's time to learn to heal, Dog Detective. Dex pulled his price gun and fired a blaze of stickers at the evil creatures. Exobites come standard with sticker-proof vests, Lady X said, laughing. But Dex ran out of ammo. When Dex ran out of ammo, he took on the exobites with his bare hands, but the swarm was more than Dex could manage, even with his martial arts skills. The exobites left the Dog Detective lying unconscious on the floor. What a shame, Lady X sighed as she bent over Dex's body. We could have been like mac and cheese, peanut butter and jelly. Dex slowly opened his eyes, adjusting to the dim light of the metal chamber he found himself lying in. A drop of something suddenly splattered onto his nose. He gave it a taste. Chocolate. Dan? Dex mumbled, looking up. Sure enough, the worried squirrel was leaning over his friend, sweating chocolate droplets. Ew. Ew. Dan's eyes widened. Dex, he cried, I knew you'd sniff me out. Dex sat up. You okay, pal? Is your chocolate chip? Dan threw himself into Dex for a bear hug. It was brutal. These giant exobiters. See, I said it right there because it's XO there, X-O, and that's how he's saying it. So that's right, I think. These giant exobiters slaughtered every Ike in sight. They didn't rub me out because Lady X digs my fine flavor and so sweet bod. Or, Dex said, maybe she used you as bait to get me. Dan was a little insulted. Oh, like you're the only Ike who could rescue me, figure out her game and shut her down. Dan thought for a second. Oh yeah, he said to Dex, you are. Too late, Lady X said. Too late, Lady X said from above. Not even the great Dex Dog Detective can save you now. She laughed and slammed the door on top of the great giant dryer. Dex and Dan were imprisoned in total darkness. Lady X nodded at the Brand X smashed potato man. He giddily turned the knob on the machine to the full dry cycle. After they've enjoyed the extra hot cycle, Lady X said, smiling, dump their bodies in the toothpaste aisle. I'm not even gonna look at Mashed Potato Man. I'm sure this is his only line. We frame toothpaste now, the Mashed Potato Man asked as he heard the machine word of life. Lady X shrugged. Everyone knows toothpaste hates sugar. Besides, we're done soft soaping. Frame them all, from spray starch to sliced salami, from calories to carbs. Then Brand X will step in and replace them all. As Lady X and her henchmen left the top of the dryer, Dex and Dan struggled in the spinning machine below. They began to run like hamsters on a hamster wheel. Dan was slammed into the side of the machine by a tumbling sock. The poor squirrel was melting in the heat of the dryer. Socks, that's it, said Dex. Socks always escape the dryer. Dex managed to catch a sock and kick off the contraption center. Got it, he shouted as he held the sock in one hand and grabbed Dan with the other. The two friends were sucked into the exhaust vent just as the machine began a violent spin cycle they would never have survived. Okay, pal, you're safe now, Dex said as they both climbed out of the exhaust vent onto the roof. Safe, Dex turned to leave. Wait, what? What's that? Yo, whoa, where are you going? That was weird. What is that? I don't know what that is. Dan asked him, Look, Dan, I just came to find you, but that's it. I don't... Yeah, Dan said. Don't get involved no more. Got it. But you might want to look at this first. Dex stopped and looked into another air vent. What the fudge? He demanded as a gush of steam suddenly blasted them both in the face. But the vent... Oh my god, I'm sorry. Through the vent, they could see the inside... So it's just a bunch of pictures of Dex Dog Detective and Sunshine Goodness. What is this? Where's the book? Does it continue from there? I guess it is. Through the vent, they could see inside the cavernous bowels of the Brandex building. There was a mechanized high-tech factory of war. Dex recognized the weapons they were making. They were the exabytes they'd seen in Lady X's penthouse. Thousands of them. I'm going to change the song 1 second. They're building an entire army of robotic exobites, Dex told Dan. As they watched, the mechanical creatures moved down a conveyor belt to have their stingers filled with black sludge. Dex whispered to Dan, But what's that oily liquid? Yo, I saw that, Dan exclaimed. It's the same stuff they shot into Crispy and the other Ikes when they rubbed them out. Suddenly, over the loudspeaker, Lieutenant X announced, Attention all... Yeah, he's just got a normal voice. Attention all icons. Curfew is now in effect. Only Brand X officials are permitted in the aisles. All violators will be punished. Dex and Dan exchanged looks. Lady X's evil plot was clear. They must be planning to finish what they started last night, Dex said. Brand X is going to take over the entire store. Come on, let's get him, Dan said, ready to charge. I ain't afraid. Well, I am, Dex said, stopping his friend. Dan was stunned. You are? Really? Big time afraid or a little afraid? Can't you see, Dan? I let Sunshine down and I lost her, and now I'm afraid of letting everybody else down and of losing them. And you too. Oh, now you done it, Dan said as he sniffed and wiped away a tear. Nothing worse than mushy chocolate. Come on, man. Every Ike in this store needs you. They believe in you. You don't understand, Dex said. I just don't know if I can cut the mustard anymore. Dan wasn't about to let the great dog detective give up. You gotta believe in yourself. You have to dare the day again. Oh, god damn it. No, shit. Go back. What the fuck? Oh my god. Shit. What the fuck happened? Come on, man. No. This isn't what I'm doing. No, I don't want to do any of this. Fuck. Shit. I hit some button and it fucking clicked out of it. God damn it. Here we go. Okay. Come on. Come on, honey. Load it, please. Here we go. Okay. I can't tell if anyone's watching this. I think it's just me, so it's fine. Let's see. Where was I? Where the fuck was I? Here we go, yeah. Dan wasn't about to let the great dog detective give up. You gotta believe in yourself. You have to dare the day again, he said. If Sunshine were here, she would. Dex took a deep breath. Dan was right. Sunshine would have believed that he could save the market. She would have believed that he could save the whole world if it needed saving, and that he would go for it, giving it everything he had. You know, Dex said, shaking his head, I do have an idea. Dan gave his friend a huge buck-toothed grin. Now that's more like it. Dex the dog detective is back. But, Dex warned him, it's really, really, really dangerous. The squirrel paused. How come you said really 3 times? I haven't ever heard you do that. Not that I'm scared or nothing. Dex put his arm around Dan's shoulder. Come on, pal, he said, smiling. Let's get out of here. Chapter 13. Dan and Dex made their way through Marketropolis to the usually quiet toiletries aisle. They spotted the line of Brand X soldiers marching by. Probably out enforcing Lady X's curfew, Dex thought. How convenient to have every Ike in town locked down for the night. Brand X could knock off the Ikes one by one with no witnesses. Dex and Dan ducked into Dr. Nustrick's office. Nustrix was a nasal spray Ike with knowledge of every ingredient of every product on the pharmaceutical aisle. Dan and Dex had almost made it through the door when Dan slipped and landed on the sleeping Dr. Nustrix's huge nose. Okay, who's Dr. Nustrix? Dr. Nustrix. Dr. Nustrix is done by James Arnold Taylor. He's got, I don't know, he's got a big old nose. He's got a big old freaking nose. He's got a big nose. I'm guessing he sounds like he's stuffed up. Holy schnozola. Nostrix yelled as he woke with a squirrel on his nose. What's going on? What's going on? Like, what the fuck am I trying to do here? What's going on here? That seems like that might be construed as insensitive. Holy schnozola, Nustrix yelled as he woke with a squirrel in his nose. What's going on? Dex pulled the bottle of Lady X's perfume from his pocket. We need you to analyze this. I borrowed it from Lady X. I think it's the secret ingredient in the Brand X elixir. Brand X, why me? Dr. Nustrix asked in panic. He had learned to keep his nose out of other people's business. I'm just a nose doctor. I can't. But before he could finish, Dex slapped him. Snap out of it, Doc. You're the only one with a nose for the job, Dex told him. Dr. Nustrix reluctantly agreed to help. Okay, he said, letting out a huge sneeze that soaked Dan and Dex. I'll give it a whiff. A short time later, as Dr. Nustrix labbed, Dan and Dex watched the elixir go into the doctor's olfactometer. The machine chugged and burped. Analysis is nearly complete, Dr. Nustrix told them. Dan started fidgeting with bubbling vials and beakers as they waited. The doctor slapped Dan's hand as he read the results from the machine. That's odd. My olfactometer can't fully identify the main ingredient, the doctor said. This I can tell you, though. The Brand X elixir is toxic to humans and highly addictive. Addictive, Dex said. Addictive. It's Charlie Sheen. It's Charlie Sheen's voice. Addictive. I'm Dex Dog Detective. I'm, Wild Thing. They call me Wild Thing. They call me the Wild Thing. On the baseball team, they call me the Wild Thing. There we go. Addictive, Dex said, nodding. Oh God, I got fucking nasty. I got nose grease on my glasses. I got fucking nose grease on my glasses on live on internet camera. How embarrassing. Okay, what was addictive? Dex said, nodding. Okay, so that explains why customers are buying up Brand X products like crazy. Dan picked up the bottle of elixir and took a sniff. The squirrel's eyes sparkled as he looked at Dr. Nustrix. Have I mentioned you look fabulous in that lab coat? Dan asked dreamily. Dex and Dr. Nustrix took a step away from the elixir-addled squirrel at the same time. We have to find a way to protect the humans, Dex said, trying to focus on the big picture. And thus, Dr. Nustrix cried, how can we regular icons compete against the irresistible elixir? Dex shook his head. He could see that it was almost sunrise. We can't, he said. It won't be long before the whole store will be. Dr. Nustrix gasped as he suddenly realized what was going to happen. The rest of us discontinued, he shouted. Dan kept fiddling with the beakers. If we could just get this info into our market's corporate headquarters, Dex said, they'd have to recall Brand X. Impossible, Dr. Nusk said. Their offices are outside the store, miles away from here. How could you possibly reach them? Dex snapped his fingers. Email, he said, from Mr. Leonard's computer. But it's in the expiration station at the other end of the store. You'd never make it there before the market opens, Dr. Nustrix said, checking his watch. I'm sorry my nose is so greasy. I'm a very gross person. Then we crossed during the day, Dex said. Dan suddenly looked up. Daytime, he exclaimed. No one has ever done that. He knocked over a few sizzling beakers as he said, You flipped your flap. Have you flipped your flapjacks? What about all those humans out there? The ones with the big huge feet that are never ever supposed to squash and see us Ikes? Not that I can't handle it, because I can. Dex knew how dangerous it would be, but he also knew what would happen if they didn't try. We won't survive another night against Brand X. It's our only shot. Nervous Dr. Nustrix was happy to see them go. He was ready to get in bed, pull the covers over his big nose, and forget the whole thing when one of Dan's mixtures caught fire and blew up his whole lab. The doctor looked at the mess, then sighed. What's going on here? His narrow shoulders slumping. Why is verifying? What's going on? Whatever. As long as it doesn't impede me. Everything's working okay, yes? Yeah. Internet's not great, but I think it's fine. What are you verifying, computer? What are you verifying? What do you need to verify? Verifying Google Updater? Why? What on earth would that be for? Okay, I think it's done. I think it's done verifying whatever it needed to verify. See, oh, I'm like basically on the part I just read. Cool. Dokie. Let's see what other. Maybe I'll see if maybe some of this music might work. This music I don't always use for reading, but it might work. No, not that one. Not that one. It's a little too much drum. A little too much drum. A little too much drum. That might be okay. Because things are going better. You know, things are going better here. They got a plan. They're working together. Lady X is not fucking torn these parts, these boys, these fun friends. She can't tear them apart. Their bond is too strong. Okay. They're as thick as thieves. They're the most steadfast friends you could ever find. And now they're gonna fucking take this lady down. Brand X is gonna get the hell out of Marketropolis, I think. Well, let's see. Onward, chapter 14. Moving fast and staying low, Dex and Dan headed across the rooftops of Marketropolis. All at once, sunlight filled the aisles, and the city instantly turned into a supermarket. Many of the market shelves were filled with drab, gray Brand X products instead of the brightly colored brand name packages. Dex shook his head. I can't believe I let it get this far. Brand X is spreading like moldy cheese, Dan said. How are we ever going to stop them in time? The first customers of the day charged... I'm sorry. In perils of doing life stuff. It's too boppin'. It's too boppin'. This might work. Brand X is spreading like moldy cheese, Dan said. How are we ever going to stop them in time? The first customers of the day charged into the store. Behind them was the tall, thin Brand X representative carrying his clipboard. His men were delivering more pallets of Brand X products, all with elixir. Dex had seen enough. We must have lost hundreds of Ikes last night. Come on, pal. Let's get going before we lose any more. The two looked down into the aisles where shopping carts were zooming toward the new Brand X displays. Dan looked at the traffic. How are we supposed to cross 10 aisles of that? He asked Dex. If the next thing you hear is clean up on aisle 1, Dex answered, you know we blew it. Suddenly, Brand X mashed potato man jumped in front of them. He cracked his knuckles. Not take that long, he grunted. Not take that long. Not take that long. He grunted with his thick, Austrian accent. Okay, let me think. I can think it's like a sprocket or something. Not take that long. He grunted with his thick Austrian accent. I mash your potatoes now. Dan took a step toward the brute. Oh, I get it. You're the Brand X mashed potato man. Oh yeah, that's clever. Well, my friend Dex is gonna get creative on your... Are you crazy? Dex cried. He's huge. Brand X soldiers were moving down the shelves. Let's get the strawberry jam out of here, Dex shouted as the two began to run. The lumpy mashed potato man quickly slung a pudding lid at them. Dex yanked Dan out of the way as the disc whizzed by their heads. The Potato Man and the Brand X soldiers were too close for Dex's taste. He drove off the shelf, pulling Dan along with him. Dan dropped into the lap of a surprised toddler sitting in a shopping cart. The child was about to take Dan into his sticky fingers when his mother snatched the horrified chocolate squirrel away. "No," she said as she tossed Dan back toward the shelf. "I'm not buying that for you." But Dan missed the shelf and plummeted to the floor, screaming. A large shoe was about to trample him into chocolate chips when Dex lunged and pulled him onto a cart. "That was close," Dex said, relieved. As shoppers continued to race for the Brand X products on display, Dex and Dan bounced along in the cart's undercarriage, just inches from the wheels. "What do you mean was?" Dan cried as the Mashed Potato Man zoomed towards them on the undercarriage of another cart. "Miss me?" the crazed Mashed Potato Man shouted, brandishing a potato masher over his head. Sparks flew as the two carts collided. A third cart, carrying General X and Lieutenant X, moved in from the other side. Dex and Dan were surrounded. The Mashed Potato Man leaped from his cart, landed in front of Dan, and began chasing the terrified squirrel in circles. Dex jumped wildly into the dairy section and tossed a stick of butter to Dan. "Okay, butter his buns," Dex yelled. The evil Brand X Mashed Potato Man had almost cornered Dan when the squirrel swung the stick of butter with all his might. The Potato Man grinned and swallowed the whole greasy stick in one gulp. Butter go good with potatoes," the ugly man said, smiling at Dan. "You like me." Dan rolled his eyes. "No, I don't like you, you salmonella-smelling mush-faced moron." Dan immediately regretted his words. "You hurt Mashed Potato Man's feelings," the huge creature whined. "Now I hurt you." The Mashed Potato Man raised his masher. Above them, suspended by a cable attached to his belt, Dex swung down, riding a bottle of soda. He yanked Dan onto the bottle as the Mashed Potato Man swung his masher at Dan. The Mashed Potato Man missed and hit the bottle cap instead. Dan cheered as the fizz from the bottle zoomed then straight up. "Dare the day," Dan yelled down at the angry Potato Man, and "Mayday, mayday," Dan screamed as the green bottle began to lose altitude. They were plummeting, heading toward the frozen food section. Dex and Dan braced themselves. The glass door of the ice cream freezer was coming at them fast. They were about to hit the door when a customer's hand reached for the handle and opened it. The green bottle whooshed inside, and Dex and Dan felt the icy cold surround them as they crashed into a tub of Polar Pleasure ice cream. Dex found himself lying alone in the snow next to a towering ice cream cone tree. "Dex, Dan!" Sorry. "Dan," he called out. "Are you okay, Dan?" A second later, Dan crashed to the base. A second later, Dan crashed to the base of the tree. Sporting a pine bow on his head, he answered, dazed, "I'm cool, I'm good." "Nice hat," Dex said, trying not to smirk at his friend. That was funny. Chapter 15. At that moment, on the toothpaste aisle, Lady X and her minions were busy carrying out their plan to rub out all the store's Ikes. They had Twinkleton, a large elephant Ike from a popular toothpaste, crammed into a dentist's chair. Who's Twinkleton? Who does Twinkleton? Who does Twinkleton? Who does Twinkleton, please? Twinkleton? Daniel Francese? "What's going on?" the terrified elephant asked. Oh, they can't both have the exact same voice. Elephants. What do elephants sound like? Elephants that I know in fiction. Horton hears a who. What did he? Who was his voice? Was that Steve Carell? I think it was. It was either that or Jim Carrey. One of the two of them did either Horton or the who heard the Horton. I don't remember. So, elephant voice. God, I don't want to get too stuck on this. "What's going on?" the elephant asks. "We have reports you're plotting against Sugars," Lieutenant X told him as he focused a glaring light into the elephant's eyes. "Me? I don't even have fluoride," Twinkleton said. "I'm just a whitener." Lady X stepped in front of Lieutenant, a drill screaming in her hand. She moved the light closer to the poor elephant and leaned over him. Twinkleton began to scream. Oh my. Back in the freezer case, Lady X's henchmen patrolling on snowmobiles spotted Dex and Dan. Dan sprang to his feet and knocked the tree branch off his head. The Brand X snowmobiles were zooming toward them. Dex and Dan suddenly heard a giant kaboom above them. More Brand X soldiers were setting off explosives on a nearby mountain. It began to shake and rumble. An avalanche was careening toward them when Polar Penguin pulled up on his toboggan. "You fellas need a lift?" he said merrily. Dan quickly pushed the little penguin aside. "I'll drive." "Can you handle one of these?" Dex asked. "As well as I can fly a plane." Well, that's what I was afraid of," Dex answered and hung on for dear life. Dan zipped through the tunnels of ice and over huge jumps. Dex shouted to the little penguin, "Polar, you need to warn the other Ikes. Brand X is behind the rubouts." Before Polar Penguin could answer, a Brand X snowmobile closed in on them. The Ike glided down on his large bat wings and landed next to them. He leaned over and sniffed Dan. "Oh, who's this bat? Who's this bat? Who's this bat? What's his name? Mr. Bat." Oh, you gotta tell me. It's Vlad. Okay, Vlad. Let's see. I'm guessing he's like a Bela Lugosi guy. Larry Miller. Okay, Larry Miller. Okay, Larry Miller. He's like, okay. Okay. Yeah, because he's like, I'm trying to think of him like waiting for Guffman. Yeah. Me and Cookie had a nice time up there in the Ferris wheel. Me and Cookie. Cookie. Oh, she still got it. Cookie still got it. Okay. Yeah, we got it. Okay. Is that the entire? It's not. Yeah, I was getting a little too like. It's more like. Is that the entire? Is that? There we go. Is that the enticing scent of rich, creamy chocolate I detect? Dan scurried behind Dex. You're looking pretty good for biting it," Dex said, putting down his guns. Vlad lifted his cape and showed them the exobite stinger mark on his rump. Oh, they poisoned. It's kind of hard to hold on to it. Let me think. Is that? Oh, they poisoned me like the other Ikes. But what can I? Okay. He's got the fucking like they're using their. Unless it's some sort of printing error, which I don't think it is based off of the spacing. I think they're supplementing W's for V's, or V's for W's rather. So it's like Vat. So I'm gonna do Bela Lugosi, which I think I can hold on to much easily. Is that the enticing scent of rich, creamy chocolate that the Dex? See, it's really good. Like all my other ones, it's awesome. Dan scurried behind Dex. You're looking pretty good for biting it, Dex said, putting down his guns. Vlad lifted his cape and showed them the exobite stinger mark on his rump. Well, they poisoned me like the other eggs, but what can I say? I am the undead. See, it's very good. Chapter 16. As Mr. Leonard pulled away from his beloved market that night, the only light coming from it was as gray as the Brand X boxes that filled the store. Roving searchlights began scanning the aisles. Mandatory security rally tonight. All icons must attend or face the penalty of elimination. A voice blared over the intercom for the few terrified Ikes who remained outside the expiration station. Brand X soldiers were gathering in force. Hold on, let me change the song real quick. Let's see. Gathering in force. It's Jerry Stiller's General X, yes? Yeah. Del Boca Vista? There we go. You seal the door. And find the fuse box, General X ordered one group of soldiers. Inside, Vlad, Dex, and Dan worked frantically at the computer's keyboard. A blue icon appeared on the monitor. How can I help you? Upload, download, scan. The icon asked. Blue, Dex said, we're going to get corporate to recall Brand X. Can you bring up a form? Suddenly they heard a spurting sound outside the station's steel doors. Dex heard someone say, this will seal their doom. I'm having a hard time because I don't know who's talking at any given moment. Dex sniffed the air. Loney glue, he said. They're locking us in. Dan panicked, looked at the expired Ikes and then at Vlad. In here with them and him. Dan raised his fingers in the sign of a cross. Let's just all get cozy, Vlad said, raising an eyebrow. I'll work with Blue, Dex said to Vlad and Dan. What does that mean? You fly around and check for loose vent gates. The vampire took off and Dan took off with Dan on his back and smacked into the wall beneath the vent. Oh yeah, good plan, Dan said. You know, if you would let me lead, Vlad answered as the two took off and careened around the room. Dex focused on the computer screen. Scanning forms. Only 2 recalls on file, the blue icon said. The first file opened and Dex was suddenly looking into the incredibly wrinkled face of Priscilla Pusley. Priscilla Pusley's genetically gigantic prunes. Dex said, oh, Priscilla, God, there's so many gravelly voice guys. Priscilla, I'm wild. They call me the wild thing. They call me the wild thing on the baseball field. That's right. Yeah, I'm that guy. I'm the wild thing. Priscilla Pusley's genetic gigantic prunes, Dan said, surprised and a little disgusted. What kind of fool needs a bigger prune? Dan asked as he and Vlad made a low pass. Nobody, Dex answered. Priscilla had the worst sales in store history. And here is the other recall, the blue icon said. I feel like I should have done a different voice with it, but I have to stick with it. The blue icon said as the second folder popped up on screen. Dex couldn't have been more surprised. It was a processing form recalling the Sunshine Goodness label. Sunshine recalled, Dex asked in shock. Who ordered it? No name, the blue icon reported. Address only. Same locations as Priscilla Pusley's recall. That's impossible, Dex said. Sunshine and Priscilla had different manufacturers. Blue, run a search on that address again for all the manufacturers on file. Dex waited for a moment. The screen was then filled with Brand X Industries. Brand X ordered both the recalls, Dex said to himself. Vlad and Dan flew past the screen again, this time upside down. I don't get it, Dan said. I don't either. What the fuck's going on? I don't get it, Dan said, then let out an oof as they crashed into the air vent cover, knocking it to the ground. Dex was fuming, gritting his teeth. Brand X took my sunshine away. Easy, bro, Dan said. I know how you feel. No, Dex said with fire in his eyes. No one can. Not even you. But you gotta stay focused on Brand X, or Brand X gonna take everything else you love too. Not while I'm still breathing, Dex said, suddenly determined. He typed a new command on the computer keyboard. We have to send a form to recall all of Brand X products. Before Dex's eyes, a blank form immediately appeared on the screen. Outside the expiration station, 2 Brand X soldiers were shooting twine at the fuse box. We are pulling the plug on these traitors, Lieutenant X exclaimed as the twine looped around the fuse-marked storage room. They pulled and tugged the twine in unison. Inside the expiration station, Dex had his eyes glued to the computer screen. He filled out the form to recall all Brand X products. Sending now, the little blue icon said. The screen flashed the words, connection in progress. Then Fitz, the screen went blank. What happened? Vlad asked. Brand X must have killed the power, Dex answered. But the email went through, right? Dan said, hopefully. It's weird that this is all hinging on like a form being filled out in an email. It's kind of a strange thing for a kid's movie. Maybe, Dex said, calculating their chances in his head. But now we can't count on headquarters coming to save us. But you said we ain't going to survive the night unless headquarters gets rid of Brand X, Dan said nervously. So what do we do now? Dex knew there was only one answer to that question. Fight, he said. Come on, he said to Vlad and Dan. Let's get to that vent and over to the Copa Banana. The A-timer's ticking. Jeez. Okay. Chapter 17. On the balcony of the Brand X detergent building, Lady X was addressing a crowd of nervous Ikes. General X and Lieutenant X were at her side. The crowd listened as she described life in the market's new world order. There are only 2 kinds of product icons, desirable like me, and undesirable. We must send all the undesirables where they belong, the expiration station. A grim hush fell over the crowd. It was everyone's worst nightmare. Look around, Lady X told them. Do you see an Ike like an inferior product? Turn in the undesirables and join Brand X for a better way of life. Antacid suddenly stood and pointed at the friendly Kiwi Cola Ike. Who's that? Is that anybody? Antacid? I'm starting to reach my limit, I think, of things I can remember. Antacid. I don't see antacid. I don't see antacid. I don't see antacid. Okay, it's not there. According to IMDb, there is no antacid. He might be a fucking character that was made for the novelization exclusively. I don't know. I don't know. Ugh, God. Okay. Antacid suddenly stood and pointed at the friendly Kiwi Cola Ike. Kiwi Cola causes heartburn, he yelled. Mashed Potato Man grabbed the poor Koala Ike and roughly hauled him away. From this day forward, Lady X shouted triumphantly, you must prove you are desirable. Inside the airfin over the crowd, Dan rode on Vlad's back as Dex whipped around on the computer mouse Vlad was dragging. They could hear Lady X. Soon we will become the model of excellence, she said, until the entire world is just like us. Fearing that they might be singled out next, the little Ikes cheered. One store, one X, one world, one X, Lady X chanted. I thought that was the crowd. One store, one X, one world, one X, Lady X chanted. One store, one X, one world, one X, the Ikes chanted along. The USDA members, Francois Fromage, Polar Penguin, Sweet Cakes, and Harry Holt quietly shook their heads as they stood on stage with Lady X. You have placed us in le pickle, Harry, Francois said. You don't understand, Harry answered nervously. She promised. This will all work out. It just has to. Lady X turned on her withering gaze on Harry. He forced a smile and joined the crowd in cheering, one store, one X, one world, one X. At the same time, inside the Copa Banana, a tattered but determined band of Ikes calling themselves La Resistance were having their first meeting. Oh, God, I don't know. I know I can do the French guy and the British guy. And I don't think anyone's going to come after me. But Lola, whose introductory line is Holy Tamales. I don't know if I want to be like doing what I would approximate as an ethnically correct voice for Lola Banana or Lola Capicola, or whatever the fuck her name is. I don't know. I think she looks like the Carmen Miranda, like Chiquita Banana Lady or whatever. So she just talks like this. Holy tamales, Lola said when she heard the chanting led by Harry and Lady X. I cannot believe what these eggheads are saying out there. Let's slice them up like sushi. She turned up the upmarket fish Ike, who was staring at her in wide-eyed horror. It's funny how they can't say some of these brand names. Sorry, just a figure of speech, she said with an apologetic smile. Suddenly, Francois, Polar, and Sweet Cakes rushed in, shouting, We wish to join La Resistance. That's swell, Maximilius Moose said. But if the boss don't get here soon, before the worried bouncer could finish, 10 Brand X soldiers crashed through the door of the club. They were followed by the evil Lieutenant X. Everyone in the club went silent as he circled the room. Dex Dog Detective has been discontinued, Lieutenant X announced, and unless you care to suffer a long, cruel expiration, you will sing your allegiance to Brand X. Lieutenant X gave his soldiers a nod, and they began singing. Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different, but all the same. Only a couple of scared Ikes sang along with them. Lieutenant X stopped in front of Francois Fromage, who refused to sing. The Brand X soldiers surrounded him. We want to hear you sing with feeling, Lieutenant X snarled into the frog's face. But I'm not the Brand X icon, he answered, then proudly began to sing the USDA Ike song. Don't get smart, cheeseballer. I'll grate you alive, Lieutenant X snapped. Dex burst into the club. He stared down Lieutenant X, then turned to the raisins on stage. Play it, he shouted. The crowd froze. Their great dog detective hadn't been discontinued. He was just getting started. But boss, Maximilius said, looking at the menacing Brand X soldiers, I said play it. The raisins on stage began the tune, and Dex sang, We are the USDA, and we serve freedom every day. Dan came through the door behind him and joined him. We protect and serve ourselves. Our goods sit proudly on the shelves.
The Brand X soldiers sang loudly, Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different but all the same. But every Ike in the room sang in response, we are the USDA, we serve freedom every day. We protect and serve ourselves, our guns sit proudly on the shelves. The Brand X soldiers were completely drowned out. Very touching, Lieutenant X said to Dex and Dan with a sneer. Maybe you two would care to sing it for Lady X. Ooh. Sing it for Lady X. Go tell Lady X this is still my club, Dex replied as the soldiers headed for the door. And you... Oop. Shit. There we go. And you and your lousy jingle aren't welcome. We will return, Lieutenant X threatened, waving a fist, to pulverize you all. Lola threw her arms around Dex's neck and squealed for joy as the Ikes crowded around him. I knew they couldn't discontinue. I knew they couldn't discontinue you, Lola said, planting a kiss on Dex's cheek. Not without a fight. Not without a fight. They call me the wild thing. I'm not without a fight, Dex told the crowd. When Lady X... Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Let's see. I knew they couldn't discontinue you. Discontinue. That's hard to say. I knew they couldn't discontinue you, Lola said, planting a kiss on Dex's cheek. Not without a fight, Dex told the crowd. When Lady X finds out Dan and I are still alive, she'll come after us, all of us, with everything she's got. If she can't have our store, she'll destroy it. We have only one option. A hush went over the crew. Boss, the moose said, he was talking about a good fight. Dex knew that no one wanted to hear, but there was nothing left for them to do. We've all lost someone, a friend, a neighbor, someone we love, Dex said, holding the worn picture of sunshine in his hand. But we can't fight for the way things were. We can only fight for the way things should be. Together we can stop this tyrant. Now who's with us? Polar Penguin was the first to step up. I'm with you guys. But could someone please turn up the heat? Maximilius Moose spoke for all the Ikes in the room. We're with you all the way, boss. We always have been. Dex nodded. Thanks. All right, then. I started talking like Steven Seagal there. Yeah, okay, yeah, good. Yes, I understand. Was it? They call me the wild thing. There we go, okay. Dex nodded. Thanks, all right, then. Let me show you what I've got in mind. Chapter 18. We're getting there. What's it fucking like? It's like 30 pages left. Chapter 18. Across the store, Lady X... I'm going to change this one. No. Across the store, Lady X was surveying her troops as they marched down the market's main aisle. Behind her, Harry Holt, the remaining member of the USDA, was nervously pulling what was left of his hair. We have the resistance cornered, Lady X said, beaming. We will take no prisoners. Hundreds of exobites flew over the troops in attack formation. We will show no mercy, she cried. We will exterminate them all. One world, one X. The reply came from Brand X-filled aisles. No Dan, no Dex. Inside the Copa Banana, Dex unrolled a map. So we'll need all the aluminum foil and trash bags in the store, he told the Ikes. And that, my friends, is one-stop shopping. Any more questions? Yeah, what about those flying ice slice and dicers, Dan asked. How do we stop those suckers? Dex looked at his fellow Ikes. I'm not going to sell you a bill of goods. We're out-armed and out-Iked. But as long as we work together, we have a chance. Suddenly, Francois yelled, Le Brandex comes! Le Brandex comes! The troops were advancing fast. This is it, Dex told the Ikes. We stop Brand X here tonight, or it's this store, then another, till they spread like mold around the world. We have to defend ourselves and people everywhere. The resistance cheered. Using a pair of high-powered binoculars on her balcony, Lady X spotted Dex.
I have the dirty dog, she said. Produce.
From the roof of the produce section, produce. From the roof of the produce section, Dex saw Lady X through the telescope. Come and get me, baby, he said with a grin. Lady X called to her general through his headset. Attack and annihilate. He's on the roof. Get him. Dex ran along the roof line and jumped to another building at the end of the alley. General X led his troops into the alley. They threw grappling hooks up onto the roof where Dex was standing. Dex closed his eyes, still holding the picture of Sunshine. He yelled, Foodfight! There we go. That's the movie title. That's the title of the movie. Every Ike suddenly appeared on the rooftop. General X looked up. Del Boca Vista. It's a trick, he cried, but it was too late. Vats of hot chocolate rained down on the climbing Brand X soldiers, washing them from their grappling lines. Dex raised his fist and another line of Ikes began hurling fruits and vegetables at the troops. Del Boca Vista. Retreat! General X shouted, and the remaining troops ran from the opening of the alley, but they screeched to a stop when they found it blocked by Francois Fromage. He was standing in front of a chain of linked sausage, and he meant business. Cream pies were loaded into spatulas that balanced on the sausage links, and with a wave of Fromage's hand, row after row of pies was launched at General X and his men. Cream them, Dex shouted from the rooftop. From her balcony, Lady X watched, and she was surprisingly calm. All right, Dog Detective, now your master must punish you. She spoke into her headset, ordering the mashed potato man to whip them up. Whip them, she called out to him. Whip them bad. The Ikes cheered as General X and his troops, it says troop, I think it should be troop, and his troops retreated in all directions. They felt like brand name heroes until the mashed potato man turned the corner. He was leading 15,000 Brand X soldiers armed with cans of whipped cream. They sprayed the Ikes, pushing them back in a wave of foam. Brand X tanks of ketchup appeared with giant hands banging on the bottles. Blasts of ketchup flew into the air. They mixed with whipped cream and sent nauseated Ikes running in chaos. Change the song. Where was I? Shit. Trying to change the song. Running in chaos. Lady X smiled from her balcony. She wasn't through with these pitiful Ikes yet. She raised a hand and a swarm of exobites took to the air. They attacked the fleeing Ikes who dove for cover. I'm exquisite, she said with a laugh. Dex saw the swarm attack. He jumped onto another rooftop and signaled every flying Ike in the market. Vlad, Dan, and an army of other brave Ikes were ready. Okay, everyone, Dex shouted, giving them a thumbs up. Let's gum up their works. They all shoved bubble gum into their mouths and took to the sky. In his XJ-1 jet, Dan chewed frantically. Just be cool, he said to himself. They're nothing but overgrown mosquitoes with gigantic deadly stingers that want to kill me. Terrified, Dan drew the buzzing exobites into a wild air chase, leading them right into a pack of flying Ikes. The chewing Ikes blew enormous pink bubbles and released them into the air. It was like an aerial minefield. The exobites hit the bubbles with a splat, gumming up their wings and spiraling to the ground. Below them, General X was loading a line of catapults with zucchini. Squash them all! That was Lady X, shit. Squash them all, Lady X shouted angrily. With a wave of the general's arm, the zucchini was fired. Polar Penguin was about to be flattened when Dex pulled him clear. Head for the banana, Dex yelled to the Ikes behind him. Lady X watched through her binoculars. She held up a spiked dog collar. Run while you can, Dex, Dog Detective. Soon I'll have you sitting up and begging for mercy. Chapter 19. Dex rushed through the doors of the Copa Banana and slammed right into Maximilius. Maximilius, Dex shouted. Phase 2, go! The large moose was trying to push his bottom through a small drain grate. Maybe I shouldn't ought to eaten that last donut, he said, himself grunting. A figure slinked from the shadows. Amateurs, Cheezel sneered. It would appear that you are in need of a professional. How do we know you're not with Brand X, Dex asked him. The weasel framed his face with his fingers. According to the lady, he said, I'm the poster boy for undesirable products. Maximilius looked at Dex. You know, boss, we could fight fire with fire, the moose said. Looks like filth. More like filth with sleaze, Dex said. I much prefer evil with charm, Cheezel suggested as a compromise, but perhaps now is not the time to quibble over semantics. Dex nodded. Welcome to the war, Weasel. Cheezel slipped a pair of goggles on. It's a far, far better thing to do than I have ever done before. he said he was saying dramatically when Maximilius kicked him in the butt, sending him down the drain. Isn't great, the weasel called back. All over Marketropolis, Ikes were busy carrying out Phase 2. They built lightning rods out of aluminum foil and attached them to structures big and small. Then they waited for Dex's signal. Inside the Brand X building, Harry Holt spoke to Lady X. "This can't be happening," he said. "You lied to me." Lady X turned to the balding Ike.
Lied to you? That's not true. I did more than you let me do. You handed me this store on a party platter.
Lieutenant X burst through the doors. He was dragging Lord Flushington Frog by the neck. He knows their plan but refuses to tell. Lady X motioned to the lieutenant, who forced Flushington's mouth open and pulled out his long tongue. Lady X picked up a knife.
"Then he won't talk to anyone," she said, lunging towards the helpless frog, "ever again."
Harry defiantly grabbed Lady X's arm. "Enough!" he hollered. Lady X turned on him like a viper.
"Careful, Harry," she said, "if you value what little hair you have left."
Harry threw his USDA badge on the floor. He knew that the badge meant nothing as long as Brand X was in control. What's the point of luxurious locks if you can't look yourself in the mirror? Lady X crushed the badge under her heel as Harry took Flushington to his side and ran. Lieutenant X began to follow, but Lady X held him back.
"Don't let him go," she said as another swarm of exobites took into the air. "He'll be wiped out like the rest of them."
The cat's really trying to get in here. I'm making a show. Chapter 20. Chapter 20. The war raged on in the produce section. Polar Penguin was trying to fend off a menacing group of exobites with a can of bug spray. Dex rushed in to help him when the brave little penguin was stung in the back. "No!" Dex shouted as the penguin collapsed and the exobites flew off. Is the video still okay? Yes, it was. Oh, it's almost over. Okay. I'll start it over. Kitty cat, you're gonna have to wait a little bit, okay? I'm almost done. We got like what? Fucking like it's like 10 pages. It's just like 10 pages. "No!" Dex shouted as the penguin collapsed and the exobites flew off. Dex suddenly heard the sound of cruel laughter. As he looked up, General X was smiling. Del Boca Vista. "Another pathetic Ike bites the dust," General X sneered. Dex drew both of his price tag guns and covered the general in stickers, driving him back. Dex picked up Polar's limp body. He looked up at the gray Brand X building. "I'm coming for you, lady," he promised. From her balcony, Lady X surveyed the damage.
"Roll over, dog detective," she said. "You're mine."
Oh, shit. Inside the Copa Banana, Lola and Sweet Cakes were tending to the wounded. The stretchers were coming in fast. Francois Fromage raised a fist and bravely cried, "Vive la résistance!" before he expired. Oh my God. Lola placed a piece of cheesecloth over his body. "Adios, my brave cheese poof Ike," she said sadly. Dex rushed through the door. "Hang in there, Polar," he said, laying the expiring penguin on a table. "If you're ever in that big freezer in the sky," Polar said, gasping, "you've got a friend, Dex." Polar closed his eyes. An ugly layer of... God, people are dying. Jesus. An ugly layer of frost suddenly covered his body. He expired. Dex turned away as Maximilius laid a tissue over his body. "Use the whole box," Dex told the moose. "Polar would have liked it that way." "Dex, Dex," a voice yelled. Dex looked up. It was Dr. Nustrix. All right. "Dex, Dex," a voice yelled.
"I ran tests on the poison liquid the exobites are stinking our Ikes with."
"Good work," Dex said. Greasy nose, I'm sorry. "So what is it?"
"It's discernative. Imagine the chemical opposite of a preservative. One dose causes the victim to spoil in its own unique way. A cookie crumbles, ice cream gets freezer burn."
"I get the picture," Dex said, surrounded by expired ice. "But we need an antidote fast."
"Ham doesn't it, Dex? I'm a nose doctor, not a miracle worker."
Dr. Nustrix said. Vlad suddenly rushed over. He'd been monitoring their plan's progress. "The lightning rods are in place. The lightning rods are in place," he shouted. Dex nodded and said, "Now phase 2 is up to Cheezel the Weasel." Vlad saluted and rushed out. He bumped into Dan, who was stumbling through the door. The chocolate squirrel was war-torn and weary. Dex helped him to a chair by the window. "Easy, Dan," he said. Dan shook his head. "Phase 2 ain't gonna work," he said to Dex. "Not with all them exobites swarming us. There's just too many of them. Using his telescope, X looked out the window. They're refueling their poison inside the Brand X building. Can you fly me over to Lady X's aisle? Sure, no problem, except I don't have a death wish, Dan muttered as he wearily followed Dex out the door. The street was still a smoking battlefield. If I can cut off their poison supply, maybe we can turn this thing around, Dex said as a can of whipped cream exploded close by. They ducked into a foxhole. Suppose you make it in. There's no way you'll get out. It's suicide, Dan cried. Dex and Dan covered their heads as another explosion rocketed the street. Like Sunshine always used to say, when in doubt, just do the right thing and it'll always turn out. Yeah, Dan answered, but I don't want to lose you too. Dex smiled through the grit and smoke. Hey, pal, you're the one who convinced me to get in the game and dare the day. You never stop believing in me, even when I stop believing in myself. That's because you're the... God, I hate this. Sometimes I hate how Dan's dialogue is written. That's because you the best, Dan said. But you go in there. You ain't coming out. Don't do it, Dex. You should be here with us. Dex nodded. I should have been with you the whole time, but after Sunshine vanished, I just gave up. I let you all down. Dex looked over the war zone. I know now that my problems are just a hill of coffee beans compared to our world. He looked at Dan and put his hand on his shoulder and said, our family. If I don't make it back, I'm counting on you to take my place, pal. Me, but you can do it, Dan. I believe in you. This place won't be the same without you, Dan said, choking up. It won't be. Dex pointed at his heart. The secret's inside, old buddy, he said bravely. I'll be just fine. He grinned at the chocolate squirrel. So am I flying or am I walking? Dan grinned back. Let's win this sucker, he said, slapping his aviator goggles. Chapter 21. Sorry. All right. In a dark corner of the dingy discount aisle, Cheezel the Weasel raised his furry head from a manhole. The weasel was behind enemy lines, and he crept along a wall, dragging a heavy axe. He spied a thick cable that ran up a telephone pole to a red box marked power. With one powerful stroke, he hit the cable with an axe. The power lines fell to the ground, and electrical sparks started dancing wildly around. Unfortunately for Cheezel, he had cut the cable and the telephone pole too. The pole tilted and began to fall. The weasel looked up sadly and dropped the axe. She is a loyal mistress to me, he said wearily. Mashed Potato Man suddenly appeared out of the shadows and picked up the axe. You got the mistress? He grunted with his thick accent. I want a mistress. Cheezel quickly ducked between Mashed Potato Man's legs and kicked him from behind. Mashed Potato Man was now standing under the falling pole. Allow me to introduce you to her, Cheezel said as the telephone pole crashed the Mashed Potato Man. Cheezel removed a pitcher of water from his coat and poured it over the Mashed Potato Man. The electric wires began to sizzle, and Cheezel took a deep, satisfying breath. French fries, my favorite, he said, pleased to be the victor for once. At the same time, Dex and Dan were flying over the Brand X building. Using a plastic bag, Dex parachuted out of the plane. Outside the Copa Banana, Maximilius Moose gave the signal to Lord Flushington on top of the sewer cover. Lord Flushington jumped into the sewer, and as if it were a backed-up toilet, water started to come out of it. The water traveled across the floor to the out-of-control power lines. As soon as the water and power got together, they caused a massive arcing, and a lightning storm began to dance all over the city. But all the Ike's buildings were safely protected with the lightning rods. Brand X's building, however, wasn't protected, and the lightning started to burn massive holes in its cheap cardboard siding. Flushington hopped out of the sewer and landed beside Maximilius. This is a genius! These buildings were not made to withstand lightning, Flushington said excitedly. I thought that was Francois Fromage. Flushington's also French. This is what you'd call the royal flush, the moose said, smiling. Inside the Brand X war room, a squadron of exobites were refueling with nasty deservative. What? With nasty deservative. They greedily sucked the stuff from a huge iron vat. Dex hid behind a... It's okay, Bubba. I'm almost done, Bubba. Dex hid behind a crate, then yanked on a line he'd looped around the vat. The black ooze... One second. My cat really wants to get in here. One second.
Hey, Uncle Perry, I didn't see you there earlier. It's been a minute since I said that, but yeah, hi. I'm doing well. I'm just reading Foodfight, the novelization. Let's see, where were we? Exobites, black ooze. Inside the Brandex war room, a squadron of exobites were refueling with nasty deservative that greedily sucked the stuff from a huge iron vat. Dex hid behind a crate, then yanked on a line he'd looped around the vat. The black ooze spilled all over the exobites. It short-circuited them in a shower of sparks. Dex ran as the ooze spread over the floor. He saw Lady X on her balcony. She was rushing away, pushing a bound Ike in a laundry hamper. Dex got a look at the Ike. "Sunshine," he said, stunned. Lady X looked down and smiled. "You dared to defy me. Worse, you rejected me. Look at me." She's right. She's very hot. Lady X is very hot. Dex started running. "I'll save you, Sunshine." Lady X kept moving. "Bad, bad dog. Now you're going to pay with your life." "Not this time, you demented dirtbag," Dex yelled with fire in his eyes. He saw Lady X wheel the hamper through an unmarked door. Dex raced through the door and found Lieutenant X standing over Sunshine with a turkey baster in his hand. Sunshine was tied and gagged, her sunshine goodness still radiating from her beautiful face. "Sunshine," Dex shouted when he saw that the baster was filled with black deservative. One drop, and his sunshine would expire. "Hold it right there, Blondie gets it," Lieutenant X growled. Dex froze and Lady X stepped from the shadows. "On your knees, dog," she said. Dex angrily dropped to his knees. The building began to shudder as Lady X looked down at him. "I always knew you were damaged goods," she said, seething. "Exterminate them both. Her first," she said to Lieutenant X. "Make him watch his sunshine fade away." "With pleasure," Lieutenant X said, pointing the baster at Sunshine. Suddenly, the weakened building began to rock. It was slowly falling apart. "Okay, then," Lady X said, running for the door. "I'll just leave you to it." Lieutenant X wasn't going to give up the fiendish pleasure of destroying Sunshine and Dex. He was about to blast Sunshine with the baster. Oh my. Dex looked down and, thinking fast, yanked at the rug he was kneeling on. Lieutenant X flipped over backward. "I thought that only worked in movies," Dex said to himself, surprised at the results. He tackled Lieutenant X and grasped at the baster. As Sunshine watched, wide-eyed with fear, she struggled in her chair. She finally managed to free one hand and yank away the gag. "Here, Dex," she shouted, tossing a handful of raisins in the air. Dex caught them all in his mouth. Sunshine smiled with pride as Dex spit them out like machine gun bullets, hitting the turkey baster with maximum force and sending it flying into the air. Dex dove for the baster as Lieutenant X dove for Sunshine. Dex hurled the baster and hit the lieutenant with it before he could grab her. The evil lieutenant fell to the floor, limp as last week's noodle salad. That was fucking weird. Dex rushed to Sunshine. She threw her arms around his neck. "Oh, Dex, I knew you'd solve my case." Dex held her tightly. "I'm sorry," he said, looking in her big blue eyes. "I thought you were—" Sunshine didn't let him finish. "I'm here," she said to the great dog detective. "We're together." Dex closed his eyes. "My world is whole again." "I never stop believing in you, Dex." Ow. Bit my tongue. Ow. Yo. Dex reached into his pocket and pulled out a faded box of raisins. "I always kept you close to my heart," he said, showing her the label. He suddenly noticed a mark on Sunshine's radiant face. "What have they done to you?" he asked. Sunshine sighed. "Brandex," she said sadly, "took my essence." "Of course," Dex said, shocked by the evil genius of Brandex. "The perfume smell, that's why it was familiar. The secret ingredient in their elixir, they turned your sweetness, your goodness into something vile." Just then, the whole room rumbled. The floor listed to one side and Sunshine began to slide away. Dex grabbed her waist. He was about to head for the door when he saw Lady X through a gaping hole in the wall. She was making her way to the exit. Chapter 22. It was turning into a rout for Brandex. In the air, Vlad and his airborne compatriots outmaneuvered the oncoming squad of exobites, which turned tail and fled. Vlad could see that the exobites had no black ooze left in them. "Dex did it," he cheered. "They're out of ammo." The squad of Ikes took off after the exobites. They attacked, blowing peas through a straw, knocking the exobites out of the sky.
Okay. As Dex pulled Sunshine through the hole in the Brand X building, they were suddenly rained upon with a spray of machine gun fire. Brand X baked beans, the kind nobody liked, were coming at them fast, and the corner of the building they were clinging to was crumbling. This whole thing could go up at any minute, Dex said, trying to shield Sunshine. She looked into his big dog eyes. They were both about to fall into the dangerous arcs of lightning crisscrossing the aisles. As long as I'm with you, she said, nothing else matters. Suddenly, Dan's XJ-1 zoomed down, trailing a rescue ladder. The baked beans pinged off its wings, forcing Dan to veer away. Dex looked up and spotted the sniper, then took him out with his price tag gun. He looked up at Dan's plane. Only one way he can make it back in time, Dex said to Sunshine. She knew he was right. Inside the XJ-1, Dan was sweating chocolate bullets. Come on, he said to himself. You demand. You gotta be for them. But, well, what had once been Lady X's fabulous penthouse to slide apart. Ugh. What had once been Lady X's fabulous penthouse began to slide apart in huge sections. All Dex and Sunshine could do was hold on and hope. You can do it, pal, Dex said as he watched the plane climb straight up. Just believe it. Believe in yourself. Come on. That's it, Dan. Loop the loop. Sunshine clutched Dex's hand. He'll get it this time. I know he will, she cheered in her sweet voice. Dan's plane turned upside down. Dare the day, he yelled as the plane went over backward and completed the loop. He whizzed past Dex, who grabbed the rope ladder just as the cardboard penthouse fell apart completely. Dare the day and fly away, Dex, Dan, and Sunshine shouted as the XJ-1 zoomed off. Dan pulled Dex and Sunshine into the cockpit. The sun is shining again, he said, seeing Sunshine's happy face. She threw her arms around the squirrel's neck. I just knew you'd do it, Dan. Me too, pal, Dex said, patting him on the back. Me too. Dan smiled as he banked the XJ-1 into a wide turn. They headed down the main aisle. Cheering Ikes waved at the plane. Dex, Dan said, you stopped Brand X. But Dex wasn't ready to celebrate yet. Not until Lady X is discontinued, he answered. Dex, Sunshine said, looking down. Something's wrong. The lightning suddenly stopped. What's happening? Dex gasped. Somebody cut the power by the loading, but dock door. Below them, Ikes were screaming in terror. A human has seen us. Scatter, run. Stomping through the aisles was a giant. The Brand X sales rep, Mr. Clipboard, entered the store. What's that jalapeno? What's the jalapenos? What? What the jalapenos he doing here? Dan asked Dex. We can bet it's not for our victory parade, Dex answered as they landed the plane and ducked out of sight. I understand somebody... Oh, chapter 23, sorry. Chapter 23. I think the final chapter of the Foodfight Junior novelization. I understand somebody ordered a recall, Mr. Clipboard called out. He glowered, surveying the store with his furious gaze. Like little Ike scattered in fear as the man in black boots began to stomp through the store on a rampage. Like Godzilla destroying a city, Mr. Clipboard tore down the foil lightning rods from the buildings and stomped them down onto the floor. Dex was furious. Dan, go find Lady X. We've got a bone to pick with this guy. No, Dex, Sunshine cried. You can't. Not a human. You'll be crushed. Dex took her hand and kissed it. He looked into her eyes. Whatever happens, Sunshine, we'll always have produce. Sunshine smiled wistfully at the great dog detective. Dex took down the cereal aisle, running against the flow of retreating Ikes. In the chaos, he spotted Maximilius, Moose, and Lola. Maximilius, Lola, Dex cried out. Let's bring it down. You got it, boss, Maximilius cried, and the two raced off with Dex. Mr. Clipboard was stomping down the cereal aisle, crushing box after box. Dex suddenly jumped into the aisle and looked up at him. Hey, Pencil Neck, it's checkout time. You pompous pipsqueak, Mr. Clipboard snapped back. I'll stomp you into oblivion. I was hoping you would say that, Dex said, and took off down the aisle with Mr. Clipboard at his heels. Dex ducked down the dental floss Maximilius and Lola had ducked under the dental floss Maximilius and Lola had stretched across the aisle. Mr. Clipboard, however, didn't see it. He tripped and fell, crashing headfirst onto the floor. Dex leaped aside as Mr. Clipboard's neck broke open. What? What? Oh, okay. It was like his fucking neck broke. What the fuck? They killed a guy. Sparks flew out in all directions. He's a fucking robot. Oh my gosh. I didn't see that coming. Dex leaped aside as Mr. Clipboard's neck broke open. Sparks flew out in all directions. Mr. Clipboard thrashed in the aisle for a moment and then was still, wiring hanging from the cracks in his body. A robot, Dex said as bursts of steam rose from Mr. Clipboard's ears. Did they know that? They were just prepared to fucking kill this guy. I don't think they knew he was a robot. They said, whatever it takes, we'll get this fucking shit out of here. We need to get rid of Brand X. Like, they're ready to kill a guy. Jesus Christ. Scary. An escape hatch in the back of the huge robot's head hissed open. Out stepped Lady X in a skin-tight red catsuit. What, she was in him the whole time? Extraordinary, aren't I? She said, looking at Dex. Dex was stunned. She'd been at the controls the whole time. How can this be happening? Lady X smiled and held a picture next to her face. Don't you recognize me, Dog Detective, Sunshine's old neighbor? Dex looked at the hideous picture. Priscilla, from Priscilla Pusley's genetically gigantic prunes, but you were recalled and butt ugly. Quick trip to Brazil for a little plastic surgery, Lady X said, patting her chin, then back for my revenge. So you built yourself a human robot and recalled Sunshine, then you stole her essence to make your elixir for Brand X, Dex said, rubbing his own chin. Dan's XJ-1 came in for a landing, and a crowd began to gather behind Dex. All eyes were on Lady X. All Adams ever wanted was that sweet sunshine goodness, she shouted angrily. 2 months I sat on the shelf next to Little Miss Perfect. No one bought my beautiful genetically gigantic prunes. Dex frowned. How did you get in and out of the store? You're an Ike. Human, she said, laughing. When you look like this, you can get them to do anything. Dex nodded. So did Dan. Clever plan, Dex nodded. Noted. But Brand X is being recalled. You'll never get me, Lady X said with a villainous glee. I still have my elixir. I'll be back. But enough about me. Let's do something about you. She jumped, did a triple flip, and kicked Dex around the aisle with amazing skill and speed. Yo, dog, Dan called to Dex, shook her smacker. Boss'll never hit a dame, Maximilian said, watching Lady X mop the floor with Dex. Dex was down on one knee. Lady X lifted her arm high, and a razor-sharp set of claws, cat claws, suddenly extended from her gloved hand. She was finally going to do Dex in. She was laughing maniacally when a fist smacked her jaw. The crowd gasped. It was sunshine goodness. But I will, the raisin girl said, delivering a roundhouse kick at Lady X. The bimbo's mine. Oh my God, she said, following the kick with a series of martial arts blows to the head and body. Lady X's plastic surgery seemed to be coming loose with each punch and kick. I'm sorry. Her face sagged into a hideous wrinkled prune. Oh no, Dan was shocked. Sunshine slapped her back to ugly, she said to the crowd as the crowd cheered. Yay, she's ugly again. It doesn't have to end. It doesn't have to end like this, Lady X pleaded, looking up at Dex. All I ever really wanted was you. Dex looked at the woman who had caused so much misery. Frankly, my dear, she said fretfully, I don't give a spam. Lady X dropped her ugly face into her hands. Dan, Dex said with a nod. Wrap her up and take her to the expiration station to recall with the rest of Brand X. I think this is the last chapter. As Dan moved Lady X to the expiration, chapter 24. As Dan moved Lady X to the expiration station, Harry Holt moved sheepishly closer to Dex. Oh, geez. Oh my, down the wrong pipe. Holy shit. Fuck. Come on, I'm almost done with this shit. Come on. I'm almost done. As Dan moved Lady X to the expiration station, Harry Holt moved sheepishly closer to Dex. I heard there was a resistance, he said to the dog detective. Call me fashionably late. Dex gave him a small grin. You may be mostly fluff, Harry, but the rest of you is pretty strong stuff. Nice work, everybody. But we've still got a lot to do. Only 4 hours until our store opens. Dr. Nustrix rose up to Dex. I don't want to do this voice again. My deservative antidote, he said, proudly holding up an atomizer bottle of liquid. It should work on every eye. Let's give it a whiff. His first patient was Polar Penguin. He spritzed a cloud of the antidote over the penguin's frozen body. Dex held his breath and hoped. The little penguin began to stir. Then he opened his eyes. I knew you'd save me, friend, he said to Dex, fully coming to after his long sleep. Oh, Dex, you should be so proud. You saved us all, Sunshine said, jumping into Dex's arms. She threw a raisin into the air. Dex coolly caught the raisin in his mouth and gave her a grin. We saved each other, he said with a wink. He patted his heart, because the secret is inside all of us. Dan put his hands on his hips and looked at the cheering Ikes. All right, he said happily. Things really turned out perfect. The good old days are back. Dex nodded. With one change, I hope. He turned to his beautiful rosy raisin girl. Sunshine, will you marry me? Oh, Sunshine fluttered her lovely long lashes. Yes, Dex, she sighed. The whole store cheered as the two kissed. Dan was a little choked up until he saw Sweet Cakes look at him and give us with a little sparkle in her eyes. He brightened. Somebody's getting dessert tonight, he exclaimed. Oh my goodness. The next morning, old Mr. Leonard entered the market. He looked around at the burnt and destroyed boxes of Brand X products on the floor and his jaw dropped. Then he looked at the shelves and all the colorful boxes and cans with the old familiar brand labels were lined up perfectly. I must be dreaming, he said, scratching his head. 1 month later, Mr. Leonard was happily helping a shopper load her groceries into a cart. Captain Crispy Chips, Polar Pleasure ice cream, and Twinkleton toothpaste topped the brown paper bag. Outside, a large delivery truck rolled up to the supermarket. I've been expecting you, Mr. Leonard said cheerfully to the delivery man. He opened a crate excitedly and pulled out a brand new box of cereal. Mr. Leonard liked the looks of the colorful new box, and he read the cereal's name with a smile. New and improved cinnamon sleuth cereal. Now with Sunshine Goodness raisins. Looks like a bestseller to me. And that is the end of Foodfight the novelization. As it says on the back, when the lights go out in the supermarket, I'm gonna put on the ending music. When the lights go out in the supermarket and the aisles come alive at Marketropolis, an exciting city filled with living brand icons called Ikes, then one night things start going bad. Sunshine Goodness, the raisin Ike, mysteriously disappears, and a mysterious new Ike named Lady X begins making some unwelcome changes in the store's inventory. As Ike after Ike gets recalled, Super Sleuth Dex Dog Detective and his pal Daredevil Dan discover that Lady X's plans are far more sinister than they ever could have imagined. Only one thing is for certain. There's about to be a food fight, and if the Ikes don't win it, they're gonna get cleaned off the shelves permanently. Get ready to take a bite out of the action in Foodfight, the junior novelization featuring 8 pages of full-color stills from the exciting new color computer animated movie. Well, I showed you the movie proper, and I read the whole book, and that was a whole lot of fun, and I had fun doing it. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to the Uncle Game Boy show. I'm going to do this again because I think this is a fucking good idea. And sooner or later, people are going to get on my level and realize how good of an idea it is too, and enjoy watching it and seeing me read it. But until then, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I guess I'll just say bye. Bye.